Well, hello. Today we're going to talk about Lesson 35, and Lesson 35 involves adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing decimals. Now, this isn't probably a real new concept for you, but we need to take a little time just to talk about it. There are rules when you add and subtract, specific rules. In fact, there are two of them that are very specific. The first one is you've got to line up the decimals. Now, if that takes putting your assignment on graph paper so that you're able to keep the decimals or the numbers lined up, that's what you need to do. But you've got to line up the decimals or you'll get a wrong answer. The second one is called putting in the annexing zeros. And annexing zeros just makes sure that you have the same number of decimal places in all of the numbers. For instance, if you look at this number, these three numbers that we're going to add together, you will notice that they don't all have the same number of decimal points. So if I was going to write this, I would probably start with the 9, and I would understand that there's a decimal place to the right of the 9, okay? And I'll at least put in one annexing 0 because I know there's at least one decimal place to the right that we have to account for. Then I would write 3.6 right underneath that. They're both lined up, same number of decimal places. And then I look at the last one and I've got 0.927. Well, now I've got two more decimal places. So I've got to account for those, and I would put in my annexing zeros this way. Put my plus there, then I would add down 7 to 15, put in my annexing 0, and some people put it in right away. Bring up my 9. 9 plus 1 is 10, plus 3 is 13. So there would be your total. Big deal. Annexing zeros and decimal points. Okay? Now, this last one, 17 minus 0.62, you've got 17, which is of course your larger number, and you know there's going to be a decimal point. And looking at what you have to subtract from it, I would guess you're going to have two more decimal points, or two more zeros. Those are those annexing zeros, and you're going to be subtracting 0.62. Okay? Now, this one's one of those that you got to do some borrowing. So this 7 becomes a 6, 10 becomes a 9, and this last one becomes a 10. Bring down your decimal place so you don't forget it. 10 minus 2 is 8. 9 minus 6 is 3. 6 minus 0 is 6. And there's your answer. Could not be done correctly if you didn't line up the decimal points and put in the annexing zeros. Okay, now when we talk about multiplying decimals, there are three basic rules. Three basic rules. Number one is no need to line up the decimal points. Okay, in multiplying decimals, you don't line them up. You don't have to worry about that. Okay. Secondly, you just perform the multiplication just the way it is without lining up the decimal points. Thirdly, count the number of total decimal points in the problem and then place them in the product. Okay, now what does that mean? Well, here's an example. We've got 1.2 times 0.006. Now, we need to figure out how we're going to multiply that. You can set it up either way. This appears to be kind of awkward to me. I like this one better. I just like the way it looks. It seems like it's a little easier to do. 2 times 6 is 12. Add the 1. 2 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. 2 times 0 is 0. So put a 0 here. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 0 is 0. Okay, now you've got everybody accounted for. Go down here. 7, 0, 0. Now we have to count the number of decimal places. Well, in this top one we have 1, 2, 3. So I put a little 3 right there. This bottom one I have 1. 3 and 1 make 4. So I'm going to have 4 decimal places in the answer. So I start here at the far right and I count 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's my answer, 0.0072. It would be the same way down here, okay? When you look at this one, you've got 0.7 times 0.03. Again, either one of these probably works actually, but I'm going to do this one because, I don't know, because it just seems to me like it works just as well. 3 times 7 is 21. Bring up the 2. 3 times 0 is 0. Plus 2 is 2. 0 and 0. Okay? You have, let's see, count the number of decimal points. You have 1 there. Count the number of decimal points. You got 2. 2 and 1 make 3. Okay, start here. 1, 2, 3. The answer is 0.021. Not too bad. Not too bad. You just really have to pay attention to how many decimal points are in the original problem before you place them in the answer. Okay, division also has 3 basic rules. Okay, they're a little different even than multiplication. 1, you got to write out the division problem. Okay. Secondly, you have to bring up the decimal point so that you don't lose it somehow in the midst of everything. And thirdly, perform the division or do the math. Okay? So, here is our first problem that we're going to look at. 3.4 divided by 5. So, this is number 1 right here. I wrote out the division problem. 3.4 divided by 5. So the 5 goes on the outside because you're dividing by 5. The 3.4 is what's being divided. So you're going to take 5, does 5, first of all you got to move up this decimal point here, okay? And then you say to yourself, does 5 go into 3? No, it doesn't. So you're going to put a 0 up here and a 0 here. You're going to bring down the 3. Don't worry about the decimal now. And then you're going to bring down the 4. Does 5 go into 34? Well, 5 goes into 30 evenly. 5 times 6 is 30. So you're going to write a 6 there and a 30 here. Subtract 4. Now you want to bring down, you're going to put an annexing 0 in there. Bring down a 0. Does 5 go into 40? You say, yes it does. 8 times. Okay? 8 times 5 is 40, and you're done. Okay? So, that is how you would work that problem, and you automatically have your decimal place in the right place because you brought it up right away. Okay? The next problem is 14.4 divided by 6. 14.4 divided by 6. Now I'm going to write that here because I kind of crowded myself on my original. So 14.4 divided by 6. Okay. Now I know that I've got to bring up the decimal point, so I'm going to do that right away. Okay. Now 6 goes into 14. Yes, it does, at least twice. Okay. With a remainder of 2, bring down this 4. 6 go into 24. Yes, it does. It goes in 4 times. And that is 24 with no remainder. So 14.4 divided by 6 is 2.4. Again, if you remember to bring up the decimal point, you won't have to hassle with it. You won't have to worry about it being in the wrong place because it's already there. Okay? Now, the last thing I kind of want to talk about is when it looks like this. And, you know, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this problem except that I want to point something out. When you work a problem like this, okay, one thing you have to be considerate of and realize is you've got some zeros in there that you have to account for. And so I always ask myself the question, does 8 go into 0? No. Okay, so you put your 0 there. Bring down another 0. Does 8 go into that 0? No. Don't forget, these are really important. People tend to want to ignore those, but you've got to have those 2 zeros there. So there's your 0. All right, now bring down your 4. Does 8 go into 4? No. Okay. So now you have a 0 there, and finally you bring down the 8. Does 8 go into 48? Yes, it does. 6 times. So finally you get your answer. Be careful of these kind of problems because they're going to get you every time. All right, I'm going to talk just a little bit about area and perimeter with decimal places. Sometimes you're going to be given area and perimeter problems, and they're going to ask you to find the perimeter of something that has decimal places, and they're going to ask you to find the area of something that has decimal places. It's basically the same method that we've just been talking about. Area is length times width. Perimeter is 2 lengths plus 2 widths. You can either add this one and this one plus this one and this one, or if you want to, you can multiply 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. When it comes to area, you're going to multiply the length times the width. So if you were going to find the area of this rectangle, you would be, let's just go with area equals 1.2 times 0.8. Okay, 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 1 is 8 plus 1 is 9. You've got a decimal place there and a decimal place there. That gives you 2. So the area of this rectangle is 0.96 centimeters squared. Okay, the perimeter is twice the length, so it's 1.2 times 2 plus twice the width, which is 0.8 times 2, which gives you 2.4 plus 1.6, 2.4 plus 1.6. Got to bring down that decimal place because we're adding. 2 and 1 is 3 and 1 is 4. So the perimeter of this is, perimeter is equal to 4.0 centimeters. The area is equal to 0.96 centimeters square. Okay? All right, very last one, very last question I want to ask about this is, if you have a square, okay, and its area is 16 centimeters squared, what are the lengths of the sides? Think about that for a second. We get area by taking side squared. Side squared. If the area is equal to 16 centimeters squared, what two numbers multiplied by each other, what number times what number is 16? If you guessed 4, you are absolutely right. So the sides on this are 4 centimeters and 4 centimeters, and 4 times 4 is 16. Incidentally, on this particular square, the perimeter is also 16. Well, hey, I hope you had a great time with this, and I hope it isn't too hard for you, and we'll talk to you later.